what I want to talk about first, boys, is the format. Obviously, the elimination process. I want to get your thoughts on that. Jack, I'll start with you. How did you find it?
Well, when they announced it last week, I thought, okay, this is going to be a slightly better version of the F1 qualifying system that they tried for a couple of races in 2016, where they just knocked people out midway through qualifying. But I think it worked better. Yeah, I think it worked a lot better in this format than that. I like the idea. However, I think that it was. I think they started getting rid of drivers too early, and also the fact that it was only a 15-minute race. I know that they have to keep to a schedule because they also had the races All-Star esports event, and they also had the Veloce esports, not the Chinese Grand Prix or whatever it was this weekend. So yeah, I do understand why they didn't have.
Yeah, that's why I want to jump in. That's why I want to jump in actually, because obviously it was a 15 lap race, and you know, I suppose it was difficult for Formula E. Obviously, they got to fill it in with all these other schedules, and it was actually I felt personally it was all right because it was an hour and a half. You had the sim races first, which was actually quite a good race, and then you had the main event with the Formula E drivers. Again, a 15 lap race. You saw both qualifying sessions, both races, hour and a half, bish bash bosh. We've done our first test race. It was pretty quick. It was pretty frantic, Will. So I think on that regard, it went. It was on schedule, which I suppose for a test race is you want it to make sure that it does actually run to schedule.
Yeah, obviously that worked out. It wasn't too long, which is obviously a good thing. I can understand how people would maybe, who are new to it, might not be engaged for kind of a full 45-minute race. So I can see why they've shortened it. Personally, I think that I'm not sure how well the elimination worked. Someone being knocked out after one lap. I'm not sure why they decided to go with that system, just in general. So yeah, maybe it could work, but I think you maybe need a bit of a more of a bedding in period, especially when you saw how kind of tight that was going into the first or second corner. With just like about a 6 car pile up. I don't think 15 minutes is necessarily wrong, but I think what the Formula One esports event have done is they made the race slightly longer, and I think that's kind of, in a way, it's just allowed for a bit more better racing rather than just kind of like a mass pile up. But maybe they could not show the qualifying, or kind of like shorten that production, or maybe even do like an edited version of the qualifying just to make it work quicker. If they just wanted to put in slightly longer race, I don't think we need 45 minutes, but maybe slightly more than 15 laps.
I think the only problem I had with the elimination process is that it was very hard. As you said, they were knocking out drivers from the first lap. And I was like, man, they were doing hours of testing. Like, Nico Muller put up like 70 laps. They were all testing in the practice session while the simulation race was going on. And like, Nico Muller put up 70 laps. Da Costa was in the 50s, like Gunther was like in the 60s. Like, they put up a load of laps in like this test session before. And then you get to the race, and in the first lap, you're out, which I thought, man, you've done all that prep, and then in the first lap you're out of the race. But I also felt as the race went on, when we got to 15th, 16th, like the 4th, 5th, 6th person who was like eliminated from the race, it was sort of quite hard to keep up with who was actually out, and it wasn't really always picked up on who was gone and who had actually left the race, Jack. So I think that could be something that could be improved.
Yeah, definitely. I think there were moments in that race where we just didn't see, or we just didn't know at all who was going out. There was a big incident with James Collado and Marcin Hua. Just before one of them was going to be eliminated, Marcin Hua was eventually eliminated. However, it was because James Collado cut the chicane. So and then James was given a penalty later on. I think he was knocked out on the next lap, anyways.
Yeah.
But still, um, they do need to iron out these problems for next weekend. I think maybe an idea of doing instead of a because I think the race lasted for about just over um, about 15 20 minutes because I know it's 15 laps. I reckon if they went for about a 25-30 minute race, it's still relatively short. And then, as Will said, maybe just not show qualifying or just like cut the sim races broadcast a bit. I think that they do need to. They do need to look back at this first race, work out what went wrong, and then just try and fix this for the next race. Because yeah, it was at times it was like, oh, what's just happened there, and what's just happened there, and yeah.
Yeah, because it was really quick. For me, maybe if you keep the sim race at that 15 minutes points, and maybe you go into the show, you have that 5 minute build up, and you maybe show a couple of like clips from, because they'll be very quick. They'll be working with Little Dot Studios, and they'll be very quick at getting those clips out. They were yesterday when they emailed us all out the clips from the race. Like it happened pretty much instantaneously after the race had finished. So I think there is scope to sort of like start the qualifying for the sim race at like 3:15, then get some sort of clips that they can show, and then start the race at like 3:40, for example, the sim race one. Go it, and then you've done your 15-minute race, and then you look forward to the main event, and you do qualifying, and then you've got a longer race. That could be something. The only thing I want to ask, Will, very quickly before we move on to the next topic of this esports special, is the elimination process, obviously, do we need it? That's my question, basically. Would it have just been better that everyone actually just finished the race and there was a battle everywhere on the grid rather than just eliminating everyone each lap?
I don't think it needs it. It's not something we've seen in Formula E. It's not something we see that often in motorsport. I guess I can see they kind of want something of a kind of like jeopardy to add excitement, but I don't think it really added much. I think it was confusing, and I think it limits the number of battles you can have on track. So yeah, I would probably just scrap it, to be honest. Especially in a 15-lap race. If the concern is that, if someone's way worse than everyone else and they're just going to be running around at the back for ages, then I guess maybe you think, oh, if we just eliminate them, they'd have to do that. But it's 15 laps. I don't think there's any problem. I would just scrap it, to be honest. I think there were too many things that went wrong with it to kind of persist with it, because I don't think it adds any value necessarily.